What's going on, everyone, and welcome to Movie Emporium's Ending Spoiler-Filled Explains video. This video, of course, will be on Midnight Mass, the newest Netflix original series that's created, of course, by Mike Flanagan. Now, before we begin, if you like this channel, awesome! Hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium, hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming in next. If you like any of the videos, awesome! Hit that like button, as well as comment below any video that you watch, including this one. So, thank you so much for checking out my non-spoiler review. If you have not seen the series, check out the non-spoiler review, watch the series, and come back to this video. So we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of what this series is, what I believe it's about, which is not very overcomplicated on what the series is about, but it still has some really interesting kind of ideas that's being presented. But this series, in its nutshell, is about a man who's played by Zach Gilford, who plays Riley, and he has been unfortunately involved with the kind of crash accident that killed his either girlfriend or wife. I can't remember exactly who it is. And he goes to jail for about like 4 or 5, maybe 7 years or somewhere around there. And he returns to his home. He returns to this small island town where his family lives, who are kind of in the middle of trying to readjust to the fact that their son is coming back from jail. They've had to put up with the situation. The father, of course, is played by Henry Thomas. The mother's Kristen Lamy. The son, the younger kid, is played by Igmi Rimi. And this town is just a very like coastal town. It's very New England in its ask, but it's run down. It's being kind of overruled by this really kind of I want to say overzealous, very into religion. She's one of those zealot type of individuals, and she's played by Samantha Stallone. And she is an individual similar to like the Marcia Gay Harden character in The Mist, where her like logic and thinking kind of propels the story. She almost seems like the main character of the story in a lot of aspects, outside of like Father Paul and stuff like that. And in essence, what the first 2 episodes are about, like I said in my non-spoiler review, they're the setup. They're the kind of what this town is. We have Father Paul who comes to the mix as Father Pruitt has been going on kind of a walk. Father Pruitt's on the end of his life and stuff like that. And then Father Paul comes in. There's a small church. Everything is small in nature. The whole townsfolk, you know, they all know each other. And they live in like a small town. There's like the drunk who's named Joe. There's like the boat dock, you know, worker and stuff like that. There's, you know, the sheriff who is actually Muslim in this series, which is pretty interesting, who's played by Raul Cooley, and which is a really interesting character because the Samantha Stallone character doesn't really like him very much, and you can tell there's a little bit of racism going on there. She constantly questions the fact that he is a believer of Allah and stuff like that, so he, you know, does his typical Muslim thing where he, you know, bows down and does the prayer and stuff like that. His son is not necessarily into his religion. The whole Christianity thing comes into effect with the son and stuff like that. And it's just your very normal, typical Marine, Maine style town. And then Father Paul comes into town and he starts kind of relegating himself into the mix. He talks about how Father Pruitt is on the walkabout. He's sick, so he's not coming home. And it becomes a really major part of the story. Well, we have this character. He starts kind of, you know, he's very shy at first. He's kind of really into the good book, you know, the Bible and stuff like that. He really preaches it very well. He gets, you know, very much into the small amount of population that goes to church. You know, most of the population doesn't go to church and whatnot. And it takes basically, I think, the 3rd episode where things start kind of really spiraling kind of almost into what the story's about, where we have this young girl named Izzy who is an individual that was unfortunately shot by Joe in a tragic accident where she became paralyzed. She always goes to church. She always, you know, tries to find faith in God and stuff like that. And in the process, Father Paul, one day in church, is able to get her to stand. She's been drinking the wine, eating the body, and, you know, drinking the, you know, whatever of Christ, and she stands, and this completely turns around the population of this small town. Everybody's like, what is going on? This is crazy. She's able to walk. She's never been able to walk. And in essence, what is happening is it almost like feels like a miracle of God. And we have people like Katie Siegel, who plays like the main love interest / main female in the story. You know, she talks to Riley a lot. She's having a baby, all the good stuff. And then we have like Annabeth Gish, who is along with her mother, you know, is the doctor of the island and stuff like that. It finds it really strange and there's something weird going on. Well, this story starts to get more and more strange, more and more horrifying, but it deals like a lot, like I said, with a lot of the, I want to say religious aspects of, you know, church and how we view faith and stuff like that. And then about the 3rd or 4th episode, or they're basically chapters, book chapters, stuff like that, and they coincide with different parts of the Bible, like, you know, Genesis and Lamentations and Proverbs, and of course Revelations when this eventually comes to an end. Well, Samantha Stallone's character, the religious zealot character, walks in on Father Paul, and she comes to the revelation, the big revelation, that Father Paul, as we learned through episode 4, was actually Father Pruitt. And so Father Paul tells the story about Father Pruitt's character in the middle of the Middle East. I think, where the wall is, you put the little notes and stuff like that in. And he goes, and because he's having mental issues, like he's losing his mind and stuff like that, he somehow finds himself in this desert, this like sandstorm or whatever, finds himself in this cave. And what ends up happening, that we finally get our true kind of revelation for what the story is, Father Paul has never really come out into the sunlight. You see where this is going. So what is ending up happening is Father Paul walks into this cave, and he sees this creature in this cave that we've seen throughout the episode that we think is Father Paul, but a bunch of like kittens and stuff like that, cats and stuff like that have been found dead because they're the blood situation. And what we end up seeing, what makes the series start going really into some really interesting territory, is Father Pruitt, who is very much on his deathbed, runs into an angel. Now, this angel seems to be in the same catacombs, or the same, cave as, for instance, Jesus was in the resurrection. So what makes it so cool is not on your belief of faith, but the fact that we have what is considered an angel that feeds off human beings. So this angel feeds off, Father Pruitt, makes him younger and turns him into Father Paul, of course. But the angel's also a vampire. So I'm sitting here going, okay, so this angel, this demon, is a vampire, but he also has like wings and stuff like that. He's very Christ-like in a lot of aspects. So what we're seeing is Father Paul having what he's calling the rise, the kind of after Jesus rose from the being on the cross and stuff like that. And he basically brings his preachings, his teachings, everything he's learned from being Father Pruitt to Father Paul, and brings that back to the town where he originally is from. So we start getting some really in-depth, really kind of hit you in the face proverbs, and very much this man who is very much a vampire in a lot of aspects, trying to teach the word of God about how this angel was a miracle, but it's slowly starting to kind of escalate out of control. And what he's teaching, he's not necessarily giving the full amount of weight to what exactly is going on. And people in this episode, the series, start, there's a couple characters that get bitten or eaten by of course, the angel, and they start turning into vampires. And so therefore, when I was talking about my non-spoiler review, the reason I say you have to get to the first 2 episodes, because the first 2 episodes, just kind of introduce everything. But once it gets into episode 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and the whole angel situation, the whole vampire situation, this is when Mike Flanagan really shows his true colors on how he's able to craft a story, how he's able to kind of manifest the use of religion in horror, the fact that the angel and stuff like that, he's able to have this character, Father Paul, give a really interesting sermon. People start believing in him. They start believing in miracles. We find out the stuff that he's giving the people to drink is actually a sacrament that the angel is giving to him to cause these miracles, because apparently these miracles are kind of like, if you ever listened or watched the Dracula movie or something like that, the blood that Dracula has is like a reconditioning or a reconfiguring of the blood cells to kind of heal themselves. That's why, Dracula is able to live for as long as he has. So going into that method, that's why the angel is able to make people resurrect, to make people live and stuff like that. Sometimes the person doesn't, live because so on and so forth. It's really kind of a strange thing, because when Joe dies at the behest of Father Paul, he doesn't survive. But as we see later on in the series, a lot of people survive. But what ends up happening is Joe gets this congregation. He starts having people on the inside, including the zealot woman, who becomes his second-hand command, and so on and so forth. She's the one that's gaining more power. She's kind of rolling herself into the mix. And then we have a couple other townsfolk who are in the know and stuff like that. And it leads to, for instance, the Katie Siegel character. She somehow loses the baby, but there's no way that she had a miscarriage. And we learn a little bit about what exactly is going on with that. And then we get into the thing where Riley is going to, him and Katie Siegel's character are kind of, Beth's character, are now kind of a couple in a lot of ways. They're kind of falling in love with each other. And instead of going to her house, he goes to Father Paul's, the Rectorium or whatever, where he's been having his AA meetings. And we see the angel giving the sacrament, extra sacrament, stuff like that, so he can, Father Paul can use it. And Father Paul sees Riley there, and then the angel sees Riley there, and Angel attacks Riley. So this is like I want to say the end of the 4th episode. The angels attack Riley. So now Riley's a vampire or whatever is considered in the series, and it becomes a really tragic character in a lot of aspects, because what ends up happening is Erin, who's the Katie Siegel character, I named her Beth, but it's actually Erin. She and Riley go on a boat. Riley tells her the story of what exactly happened, so we flash back to exactly what was going on. And this is where we get Riley going, "I love you." Erin goes, "I love you," blah, blah, blah. And then we see what exactly happens to a vampire when sunlight happens, and it's very much a kind of shadowing effect of what's going to happen later on in the series. But Riley, of course, dies in the 5th episode. Now, that was really a shock, because if you think about it, the main character doesn't usually die in the 5th episode. It's usually blah, blah, blah. But this story was never about Riley. This was a story about Riley and us as the surrogate moving to this island to get the story of, Father Paul. So Father Paul and Bev, who is the Samantha Stallone character, are in essence the main characters, but it leads into what exactly is going on. We have Father Paul getting into the skin of the people on the island, and he's going to use the Easter Mass to basically convert them into what he is, which is a vampire state, to live forever, to feed off the world, stuff like that. Bev has a different, opinion, and it leads into episode 6, where they have Easter Mass at midnight. So Easter Mass at midnight is insanely crazy, and what ends up happening is all the townsfolk, and because they offer him this drink that is basically rat poison or some kind of poison that will kill them and bring them back to life as vampires. And this is when the angel comes into effect. He comes to the room. One of the characters dies. I think it's like a Zeke or something like that. He comes back to life, and then a whole bunch of the townsfolk start drinking and they die, and blah, blah, blah. The mother of Annabeth Gish's character attacks the angel. Angel kills her, blah, blah, blah. Well, in this reality, nobody really dies. They turn into vampires. So, like, the parents of Izzy's family turns into vampires, and these people turn into vampires. Henry Thomas's character turns into vampires, and then we have this small subset of individuals who kind of run off to escape from the island. And it turns into a pure vampiric horror story, which is awesome and insane and crazy and just over the top and strange. And then everything spirals out of control. People are trying to escape, and by the end of this story, this is what's so crazy. By the end of this story, Izzy and Warren, who are the daughter, Izzy's of course the one in the wheelchair, and Warren's the son of Henry Thomas, and of course Riley's his brother and stuff like that, are literally the only ones to survive. It's pretty nuts when you think about it, but everybody finally comes to the conclusion after they burn the whole city to the ground, after the Riley Kuhl character burns the kind of safe haven building to the ground, that everybody's going to die. So everybody meets in the town except for Bev, who goes off to the water to try and escape the being burned alive, and the whole town is disintegrating to ash. The sheriff, of course, didn't get turned into vampires, so he's killed with gunshot wounds and stuff like that. But it's really, really kind of sad and depressing, because even Erin's character dies, even the Annabeth Gish character dies, and everybody in the town dies but the two people, the Adam and Eve characters. And yeah, it's pretty crazy to think about, because in the end, there really was no justification. It was about power-hungry individuals who thought, well, this is the end of times, we're going to convert people into this way of thinking and blah, blah, blah. We even see, the Muslim sheriff get kind of almost converted, like, because of the pressure he's getting put under by the Bev character and stuff like that. And it's pretty strange and crazy. And then, everything that just kind of completely starts falling apart. And like I said, everyone dies and the whole town burns. And that's the end of the vampiric story and stuff like that, because the angel gets his wings ripped and stuff like that, so on and so forth. But I didn't think by the end of the story that everyone would be dead. I thought some people would live. I didn't think it would just be the two kids. Even the kids at the end of the story are kind of in a boat. They're just like slightly offshore. They have like a 30-mile trek. But I didn't really think the story would go the way it did. I really didn't. I think this was a story where I thought it was going to be about a preacher who was just mentally unhinged. I thought it was going to be a preacher that was going to be, converting the town into becoming religious zealots. And what ended up happening, it's about vampirism. It really is. What's even crazier is the Annabeth Gish's mother and Father Paul are actually the parents of the Annabeth Gish character, the doctor. So that makes it really, really interesting and strange how Annabeth Gish's character doesn't recognize her own father, but I think it's kind of a mystery left unexplained till the very end. The really interesting part is the mother of her notices who it is and realizes that there's something really truly awful, because when they leave the church, they're like, this is not my church, we never want to come back here. And I thought that was kind of fascinating because I'm like, there's something going on more here than is truly meets the eye. And then we find out they were a couple and they had this kid and so on and so forth. So at the very end, Father Paul realizes that what he did is a mistake, and he tries to atone for his mistake, and unfortunately he ends up dying as well. So everybody but the two kids die, which is pretty crazy. Even now, if you sat through that whole long-winded explanation, thank you so much. It's my kind of breakdown of the season or the limited series. There's a lot to this season, even stuff I forgot or didn't even talk about. But if you want to know what the ending explains kind of what this story is even about, it's about faith. It's about your look on faith. It's about how people take faith maybe too far sometimes, how what you believe and who you are is what you should be. You should be true to yourself. It shouldn't be about who or what is telling you to be. It's very typical of a religious group of individuals similar to the Christianity or Catholicism or something like that, to be really forceful in their nature of what they're trying to say and who they're trying to say. I'm not saying everybody in these religions are like that, but for instance, we have the Muslim individual and how he treats his son because his son wants to try the Christian faith and stuff like that. He's like, no, you need to be Muslim. It's just, you have to be who you are, and if you don't like what that is, the people can't hate you for it. And it's also looking on just life in general and how we view the world and just this kind of chaotic nature, with the whole COVID situation, the pandemic. Every movie or TV show has some kind of view on that situation where things start getting out of control with this type of group. For instance, Bev turns into this religious zealot cult group, and she's turning people away. She's turning the town into her own kind of vampire of the undead. And then we have this other small group who have this different opinion view and stuff like that. And just how the opinions clash with another group of opinions. And it's just how we kind of continually clash at one another instead of working together. And that's what Father Paul's character is trying to convey, is even though he is going to add it a little bit strong, he's trying to convey about how this world, this view, this situation is all about a particular purpose. There's a reason that blah 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 is doing this, there's a reason blah 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 is doing that. And I really feel like it's a very strong message about just being who you are and what you are, and not worrying about what the other person says. And even if you believe what the other person says, do it in a very positive manner. And I think what Father Paul was always trying to do is, even though he was doing it in a very misguided manner, he was always trying to unite everyone to make this town that he always loved into a much more interesting kind of look into the views and worlds of the society itself, trying to make it a more cohesive group. So even though there's zombies or vampires or whatever they're going to use in a series like this, it's just teaching the world to be much better than what it is a really powerful and potent, kind of concept. And I think that's what happens here. And on top of that, it's a vampire story, which is really cool. It's a story that I feel is very much inspired by a Salem's Lot or Lost Boys or anything that Stephen King has done, because as we've seen, Mike Flanagan wrote and directed, of course, Gerald's Game and, of course, Dr. Sleep. So you can tell even stuff like a Ouija of Evil, you can tell the Haunting of Hill House. He's very much inspired by the King lore. He's very much inspired by William Castle. So these stories he tells have a very deep message, but they also have a very cool kind of town folky feel to it. These people all know each other. The world that it is Stephen King a lot of times is just small towns and Derry, Maine, stuff like that. So there's a very Maine feel to it. The fact that this town is very cut off from the world very shows that, when you have people that know each other and they start distrusting each other, or they start doing things that are out of the norm, people start questioning, and then they're stuck in the island and they're not really able to get out. It's almost like you're locked and you're kind of in a situation that you can't get out of. And that's a really cool, interesting kind of conceptual ideal that, Mike Flanagan does in a lot of his movies, because, when you look at the world around you and you look at what Mike Flanagan is trying to present, when he's looking at how religion works in horror films, this is very much an idealistic view of that world and how it presents itself. So I really think it's a classic example of how to use something that a lot of people believe in and how to use it in a very interesting conceptual way of just telling people how to, view themselves, how people end up, looking at the world, and using individuals that have a lot of problems, a lot of, mistakes that they made in their life, and how they atone for that. So Father Paul atones for that kind of stuff, and even Riley atones for it, and eventually cleanses himself in a lot of ways, and that's how religion is used. But like I said, like I do in all my Ending Explains videos, this is just one theory. There could be other explanations when it comes to endings or when it comes to the story itself that maybe I'm missing, or maybe I just didn't realize that, that's why I like reading some of this stuff, because I like seeing people's theories and stuff like that. But overall, I think the message is a little more clear than a lot of other Ending Explains videos I've done. I think there is other theories behind it, but I think for my official conception and idea for an Ending Explains, this is just a story about your faith and how you view and how everybody has their own opinion and so on and so forth. So, but that'll do it. That'll be my take, my Ending Explains spoiler-filled review of Midnight Mass. Thank you so much for watching. In the comments below, as I always say, let me know your theories. Let me know what you think, what your overall conceptual idea is when it comes to this story. Is it much deeper than religion? Is it much deeper than, who you are and what you are? All that good stuff. Otherwise, if you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button, and we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out.